approximately 6:41 p.m., an anonymous caller called the 911 call center here in Cumberland County to report that there was a person under the bridge, quote, going crazy, and that they thought that the person needed help. The caller, however, did not want to be involved in the situation and hung up before they were able to be identified. At 6:42 p.m., officers from the West Shore Regional Police Department were dispatched to the area of Lowther Street where I-83 passes over the bridge there to conduct a welfare check. At 6:47 p.m., 2 West Shore Regional Police Department officers arrived on scene, and they located an adult female who was later identified as Romaine Elizabeth Marzalek. The woman was initially seated at the bottom of there's kind of a concrete embankment there. She was initially seated there, and as the officers approached her, the 2 officers, she stood up and took a couple steps towards the officers. The officers asked her what's going on, and they also advised her that they had received a phone call about a woman who was screaming under the bridge. Marzalek hesitated and then said yeah in response to the officer's statement about the call. She then bent over at the hips and stated, it seems like to herself, "This is tough." She then hesitated again before quickly standing up straight, reaching into her shorts and pulling out a handgun. She then announced to the officers, "I have a gun." She lifted the gun in the direction of one officer and then swung the weapon around towards the other officer. As she was doing this, the officers drew their own weapons and ordered her to drop the weapon. They withdrew slightly back to lengthen the distance between her and them. As she waved the gun in the direction of the second officer, the officers both fired their service weapons at Marzalek. She immediately went down to the ground. All of this that I described to you took place within 40 seconds of the officers first encountering this woman. This was a very quick developing situation that these 2 officers were dealing with on August 25th. The officers immediately attempted to call the incident into county control. The radio signal, however, under the I-83 bridge was weak, and they initially had some difficulty making contact with county control. Once they were able to establish communications, they reported that there was an officer-involved shooting and that a female was wounded and needed medical attention. They quickly addressed her injuries and discovered that she had a graze wound to her head and that she had been struck in the upper left hip area of her body. As they were assessing her wounds, they also discovered that she had written across her chest, "Do not resuscitate." As the officer read that to himself, as he saw that message on her, he kind of said to himself, "Do not resuscitate." She responded, "Yeah, this didn't work how I thought it would." They then proceeded to provide her with medical attention until an ambulance arrived. And I would note that there was also a constable that arrived on scene after the shooting took place, and he assisted with the medical attention that she was receiving. As I indicated previously, the Pennsylvania State Police were immediately notified and began their investigation into this incident that evening. It was learned during the investigation that the handgun that Marzalek pointed at the officers was actually a type of pellet gun that was designed to replicate the appearance of a .45 caliber handgun. Specifically, it was a Colt M45 CQBP blowback .177 BB pistol. I will tell you, I've seen it, it looks real. And as I've said, the entire incident lasted only 40 seconds. Another fact learned during the investigation was it was Marzalek herself who called 911. She was the anonymous 911 caller. The fact that Marzalak called 911 to report herself as someone going crazy, her actions prior to the shooting to include her hesitation and her comment that this is tough, her rapid retrieval of the handgun, which had been hidden in the waistband of her shorts, her announcement that I have a gun, her failure to immediately drop the weapon, and combined with waving the weapon in the direction of the officers, and finally having written on her chest, "Do not resuscitate," and later making the remark, "This didn't work out how I thought it would," lead me to the conclusion that Marzalek created this situation for the purpose of causing officers to believe that they were in danger of death or serious bodily injury, and that this situation would cause the officers to shoot and kill her. Thankfully, for both her sake and for the sake of the officers, she survived. As you may know, she is currently facing criminal charges. She's facing 2 counts of aggravated assault by physical menace, and she is waiting a preliminary hearing on those charges. And I caution at this time, as she is charged with those charges, at this point in time, she is still presumed to be innocent unless and until she is proven guilty in a court of law. As I said at the top of my remarks, the decision to use deadly force was justified in this incident. In reaching this decision, I have taken into consideration all of the facts that I have just described above, as well as the law concerning the use of force in self-defense and in defense of others. Sections 505 and 506 of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code control my review of this situation. Where an actor believes that force, in this case deadly force, is necessary for the purpose of protecting themselves or others, the use of force by such other person, when there is force used against them by such other person, the use of force by the officers is justified. I would like to make a few extra comments here. First of all, I want to thank the Pennsylvania State Police. This is the 4th time, unfortunately, that I've had to deal with a situation since I became district attorney in 2022. And each time the Pennsylvania State Police impress me with how quickly they respond to the scene, how quickly they handle these investigations, and how thoroughly and complete their investigations are. I really thank them. As district attorney, it leaves me in a place feeling very comfortable that the investigation that they're going to do is a good, complete, and thorough investigation. So, Captain, I want to thank you and your troopers for all the work that they've done, and Lieutenant, your barracks, as usual, is top-notch. One other thing, and really I also want to thank the West Shore Regional Police Department. Tony, your officers and very quickly recognized the scene, very quickly. I'm always impressed in these types of situations where the officers go from having to use potentially lethal force to transitioning to trying to save someone's life. And once again, that's what occurred here. These officers very quickly processed the scene and then immediately began assessing the injuries and trying to treat those injuries and making sure that an ambulance was called very quickly to make sure that she received medical treatment. That's really a compliment to your officers and a credit to the training that they have. One other thing, if I could, this is a situation that, for me, is, I believe we have a crisis here, a mental health crisis that we are dealing with not only here in Cumberland County, but in this state. And I really feel that this highlights the situation where we need, as a state, to do something about this mental health crisis. How many more times do we have to have these types of situations where you have someone who is obviously having some mental health issues going on, we need to find some solutions here. And, you know, I call upon the state, I call upon the mental health experts, please, let's get together. Law enforcement, you know, we deal with mental health issues on a daily basis, but we don't want to be the solution to that crisis. Our prison is 25% of the prisoners in the Cumberland County Prison, approximately 25%, in one way or another are dealing with some type of mental health issue. That's a large number, and really I'd like to see that number reduced, because I don't think our prison system and our court system is really, our criminal court system is the place to be dealing with these types of cases. So that completes the investigation. That completes my review of the situation. I know the West Shore Regional Police Department has their own procedures that they have to go through to make sure all of their procedures were followed. But as it concerns the investigation by the District Attorney's Office, I consider it now closed, and I certainly would be willing to, in fact, if you want, I don't know how well this will show up, this is the handgun, and I'll give you an opportunity afterwards if you want to try to get a closer view of this. This is the handgun, or replica of the handgun that the officers were confronted with on that evening. So this gives you an idea of how real this looks, and the split-second decisions these officers have to make when faced with a situation like this. As I said, I'll open it up to any questions you might have at this time, if you have any.
Would you say, closely, when you deem it correct that this was attempted suicide by cop?
I hate to use that term, but you know, and again, I have to be careful in what I'm saying, because there are still criminal charges pending in this matter. But my conclusion was that I believe that she was trying to provoke the officers to shoot her as part of the investigation as to whether the officers were justified or not. That's my conclusion.
Any indication of what she might have been going through in her life that would have caused her?
At this point in time, I really can't comment on that.
1 second, I have to fix the microphone real fast.
Okay, is this the one that?
While you're doing it, maybe we'll let you hold that picture up.
Once and then had the grazed wound.
She has two wounds, one to her head, which is a graze wound, and one that entered her hip and exited behind.
Okay. Do you know how many times both officers shot?
At this point in time, I believe it was 7 times, but I'm not exactly sure.
And you comment too about the mental health crisis in particular. This, you know, how dangerous. You mentioned about this situation with mental health crisis that you're dealing with in Cumberland County. I mean, just talk a little bit, reemphasize that point about. You mentioned about the concern you have about, you know, the situation as the, you know, and the crisis as a whole that Cumberland County and other communities are dealing with.
Well, what we see across the county, not just this incident, and I'm not just speaking about this incident, I'm talking about some other officer-involved shootings, and I'm also talking about shooting or incidents that never involved any type of shooting. Officers, day in and day out, are being confronted by people that are in mental health crisis. They want to get them help. They take them to the hospital, and at some point in time, they wind up encountering the same person over and over again. Our office, I know the Pennsylvania State Police have specific situations where neighbors are being terrorized, for lack of a better word, you know, when there's somebody living in their community that has mental health issues and they are causing serious inconvenience to the neighbors, with whether it be threats or just the incidents that are very harassing situations. And on the law enforcement side, we're left with having to make a choice between wanting to get someone help and not wanting to have to prosecute them. And then on the other hand, we've got to protect society. We've got to protect the neighbors. We've got to protect the citizens of this county. And it's always a very delicate balance. And if there is a way, you know, we're in a budget crisis right now. And with the budget crisis, money is not coming into the county. to deal with this situation until the budget is settled. And so there are a lot of different factors at play here, and I really wanted to use this moment as an opportunity to please ask the legislature, ask our mental health experts to please give us some help, give these officers some help on the street, and really give these citizens that are dealing with these situations some help.
I just want to confirm, is the internal investigation, is that still ongoing? And then are the officers on administrative duty, or they come back to work?
So, first of all, I want to say thank you to Sean McCormick, our district attorney, who likes to deal with issues before they become problems. And so we had a policy and procedure already in place on how to handle things. And one of those policies and procedures was to not do the internal investigation to see if any policies or procedures were violated until after the investigation was completed. The officers have been on administrative leave, and let's be realistic, they're victims as well. Not only them, their families. So we've been providing them services, making sure that they're being seen by the mental health professionals to make sure that they're processing the scene. And as we speak today, they are going through a training, a firearms training through the PSP to make sure that when they are ready to come back, they are certified and in the right state of mind.
Okay, any last minute questions? Thank you all very much for covering this story here today. Thank you. If anybody wanted to get a closer view of this, you're certainly welcome to.